The NBA offseason is approaching its end, and while practically every franchise in the league has already made moves to strengthen their rosters, calmness continues to prevail in San Francisco. The Golden State Warriors remain in a state of waiting, without announcing impactful trades or significant signing. But the apparent silence does not mean an absence of conflict behind the scenes. On the contrary, there is a storyline that has been consuming the attention of the front office, players, and even the most loyal fans. The protagonist of this story is Jonathan Kuminga, one of the most talented and promising young players on the roster, who at this moment finds himself in a contractual impasse capable of changing the direction of the franchise. Kuminga is in restricted free agency and has already rejected an initial offer from the Warriors. The proposed deal was for 2 years, worth a total of $45 million, which would guarantee him around $22.5 million per season. The 22-year-old forward, however, believes that this figure is well below his real potential and expects an agreement closer to $30 million annually. This disagreement has stalled negotiations and created a sense that the relationship between player and franchise has deteriorated. Amidst rumors and analyses, everything indicates that Kuminga's future in Golden State is increasingly uncertain. For the Warriors' management, this scenario is particularly delicate. On the one hand, there is the concern of not losing a talent who could evolve into a league star in the coming years. On the other, there is the risk of heavily investing in a player who does not seem fully adapted to the playing style that has defined the team under Steve Kerr. The group's chemistry has always been the franchise's hallmark, and keeping someone who does not feel part of that project could compromise the collective. The dilemma is clear. Keeping Kuminga could mean stagnation. Trading him could represent both the loss of a future star and the chance to find the right pieces to revitalize the team. It is in this context that a bold trade possibility arises. Reporter Jake Fisher revealed that the Warriors executives view positively the idea of involving Kuminga in a deal with the Chicago Bulls. The central piece of the possible agreement would be Australian guard Josh Giddey, a 21-year-old also in restricted free agency. Like Kuminga, he did not secure the extension he wanted and is seeking a more substantial contract. Talks in Chicago have not advanced, and rumors suggest his market value is around 3 years for something between $65 and $70 million, or roughly $20 million annually. This more balanced figure opens the door for new negotiations to take place. According to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, there is speculation about a scenario in which the Warriors would receive not only Josh Giddey, but also center Nikola Vucevic, guard Ayo Dosunmu, and a 2028 first-round draft pick. In exchange, they would send Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, another promising young player on the roster. From a financial and technical perspective, it would be a complex operation, but with the potential to redefine the immediate future of both franchises. To make the move viable, Buddy Hield would probably also be relocated in a parallel transaction, ensuring the numbers fit within the NBA's salary cap rules. The reasoning behind this proposal makes sense. Kuminga's fit in Kerr's system has never been simple. Despite his physical strength, athleticism, and potential for further growth, the forward has struggled to adapt to the collective, ball-movement-heavy style of play that defines the Warriors. In contrast, Giddy has exactly the qualities the Warriors currently lack: refined court vision, the ability to control the tempo, and the creativity to involve teammates. He does not need to monopolize scoring to be impactful, which makes him a perfect complement to Stephen Curry, who could play more off the ball, maximizing his movement and his near-unfailing accuracy from long range. Giddy's numbers last season reinforced this perception. Playing for the Bulls, he posted consistent averages of 14.6 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 7.2 assists, while also contributing defensively with 1.2 steals and 0.6 blocks per game. The big surprise, however, was his improvement in three-point shooting. While in Oklahoma City this was one of his main weaknesses, in Chicago he showed significant progress, reaching 37.8% efficiency. After the All-Star game, the leap was even greater, 21.2 points per game, 9.3 assists, 50% field goal shooting, and an impressive 45.7% from beyond the arc. A clear sign that he is on the rise. Nikola Vucevic, included in the speculation, would bring the Warriors a different profile in the paint. Although not considered an elite rim protector, the veteran center continues to produce at a high level. With averages of 18.5 points and 10.1 rebounds last season, he remains consistent and could provide the team with a more measured game in crucial moments, especially in the playoffs when the pace slows down. His pick-and-pop ability and accumulated experience make him a valuable option to diversify the team's playing style. Ayo Dosunmu, meanwhile, would fit the need for a perimeter defender. In a conference increasingly filled with explosive guards, having someone capable of defending with intensity from the start of possessions is essential. Furthermore, his offensive growth in recent years has made him a useful two-way player, adding even more depth to Golden State's roster. The package is completed with the 2028 draft pick, which could serve either as insurance for the future or as a trade asset in later moves. For a team that needs to balance present and future, this asset carries significant weight. On Chicago's side, the reward would lie in Jonathan Kuminga's developmental ceiling, who showed flashes of stardom in the playoffs against the Minnesota Timberwolves when he carried the offense in Curry's absence. In 3 decisive games, he averaged over 26 points with high efficiency, proving he can take on a leading role when given that responsibility. In Chicago, Kuminga would find both space and playing time to expand his repertoire, while also joining a young core that includes Matas Buzelis. Moses Moody, although less high-profile, would also add consistency with his outside shooting ability and defensive discipline. For the Bulls, it would be a chance to start shaping a more solid future without sacrificing immediate competitiveness. If this negotiation between the Warriors and the Bulls were to truly advance, the practical effects would be felt immediately. In Golden State, the arrival of Josh Giddey would mean the introduction of a secondary playmaker capable of taking on creative responsibilities, something that has long been discussed as necessary to ease the load on Stephen Curry. At 36, Curry remains an offensive phenomenon, but the franchise needs to think of ways to preserve his body and prolong his efficiency. Having a partner who can dictate the pace, distribute passes, and organize the attack would be a key piece in maintaining the team's competitiveness at the highest level. Giddey's style fits almost naturally into Steve Kerr's system. The coach's offensive philosophy has always been based on constant movement, quick passing, and spatial awareness. Players who think collectively and have above-average court vision thrive in this environment. If we consider that Giddey has already shown progress in his shooting and confidence when attacking more organized defenses, his impact could be immediate. He would become a link that unites experience and youth, bringing freshness to a roster that has aged and lost part of its versatility in recent years. However, this analysis is not made up of strengths alone. It is necessary to acknowledge the risks. Even though Giddey has improved in three-point shooting, his sample size of consistent performance is still small. There is a possibility that his post-All-Star game numbers were a temporary peak rather than a permanent trend. If that proves true, the Warriors could struggle to maintain the spacing that has always been one of their greatest weapons. In addition, defensively, Giddey is not a specialist, which would require tactical adjustments to compensate for his limitations. The presence of Nikola Vucevic, on the other hand, would bring a different kind of impact. Unlike the centers who usually shine in Kerr's system, Vucevic is more geared towards half-court play. His ability to score in the paint and step out for mid-range shots can be useful, especially in playoff situations. However, his lack of defensive mobility could expose the team against opponents who constantly exploit switches. The most plausible solution would be to split his minutes with more agile centers, such as Kevin Looney, ensuring a better balance between offense and defense. Ayo Dosunmu, in turn, represents exactly the type of reinforcement the Warriors currently lack, a primary perimeter defender. The Western Conference is full of guards and forwards with explosive athleticism like Ja Morant, De'Aaron Fox, and Anthony Edwards. Having someone willing to pressure from the start of possession and wear these players down can make a huge difference in playoff series. Do Sunmu is not yet a star, but his defensive mindset, combined with offensive growth, could make his presence a decisive factor. In the broader picture, the 2028 first-round pick would be the element that balances the risks. Curry's cycle is inevitably approaching its end, and the Warriors know they need to lay the groundwork for a less painful future. Securing draft assets means having the possibility of building a smoother transition or even using that capital in future trades. Depending on Chicago's performance over the coming years, that pick could become even more valuable, increasing the return on the deal. On the Bulls' side, the equation is equally fascinating. Betting on Jonathan Kuminga is believing in a star-studded future. Since Derrick Rose, Chicago has not found a youngster with such athletic and technical potential to become an elite player. In moments of protagonism, Kuminga has already shown he is capable of carrying an offense. His performance against the Timberwolves in the playoffs was a faithful portrait of his ability. Standout numbers, high efficiency, and the confidence to take responsibility in decisive games. In Chicago, with more possessions and tactical freedom, his growth could be exponential. Furthermore, Kuminga would fit into a core that has the potential to become competitive in the medium term. Alongside Matas Buzelis, Patrick Williams, and Kobe White, the young forward could form the backbone of a renewed project. The arrival of Moses Moody would complete this strategy. Although he does not have the flashiest numbers, Moody is the type of player every coach likes to have. Reliable, disciplined, and able to contribute on both ends of the court, he could quickly find a role in a rotation that lacks consistency on the wings. The Bulls' dilemma also involves money. Josh Giddey had been asking for figures close to $30 million per season, something the front office considered too high for the current stage of the project. By giving him up and betting on Kuminga, Chicago could negotiate a renewal under more accessible terms, maintaining flexibility for the future. At the same time, they would risk losing a rare playmaker, something not easily found in the market. Financially, the Warriors would also see benefits. The franchise's payroll is already one of the heaviest in the NBA, and giving Kuminga a near-max contract could worsen that situation further. By opting for Giddy on a more balanced deal, management would gain some breathing room to stay competitive without sacrificing too much flexibility. Even so, the risk of giving up on a player who could become a star will always exist. And it is exactly this kind of decision that defines the direction of a franchise. It is inevitable that a move of this magnitude would divide opinions. Warriors fans might see Kuminga's departure as an irreparable loss, while others would view the trade as necessary to prolong the Stephen Curry era. On the Bulls' side, the arrival of Kuminga could reignite hope, especially in a fan base tired of the lack of progress in recent years. Among analysts, the debate would be intense. Some would defend the immediate logic of the fit, but others would point out the risks of parting with young talent before they reach their peak. Even so, it is precisely this kind of gamble that drives the NBA. The league has always thrived on bold decisions, and often the greatest successes have arisen in scenarios of uncertainty. Just remember how underestimated players in trades became protagonists in new contexts. History shows that taking risks can be the difference between stagnation and evolution. And this is where another element that has gained traction in recent weeks comes in. The name of Sotto. The young Filipino center has been rumored as a possible addition to the Golden State Warriors roster, and his impact could go far beyond what happens on the court. For millions of fans in the Philippines, Kai is not just a player, he is a symbol, a national idol. His arrival at the Bay Area franchise could open new commercial doors, strengthen cultural ties, and further expand the Warriors' global influence. However, Kai Sotto's impact would not be limited to marketing. With his height, wingspan, and defensive potential, he could add new possibilities to Steve Kerr's system. In a team that values movement, tactical intelligence, and versatility, Sotto would have the conditions to evolve in an ideal environment for his development. Under the guidance of veterans like Curry and Draymond Green, he could take important leaps in his game and establish himself as a rotation piece in the medium term. Kai Sotto carries in his journey a symbolic weight that goes far beyond statistics. For Filipino basketball, his presence in the NBA represents the materialization of a collective dream. Millions of fans in the Philippines follow every step of his career as if it were a reflection of their own hopes of finally seeing the country consolidated on the international sporting stage. Should his arrival at the Warriors materialize, the immediate impact would be a wave of global engagement that would further expand the already consolidated brand of the San Francisco franchise. Over the last decade, the Golden State Warriors have managed to transform their sporting identity into a cultural phenomenon. The philosophy of play based on constant movement, long-distance shooting, and collective intelligence has won championships, and also fans spread across the planet. The possible inclusion of Sotto in this context would add an unprecedented layer of cultural connection. The Filipino community in the Bay Area is significant and passionate, and having a direct representative on the court would create a profound emotional bond, turning each game into an even more meaningful event. On the court, Sotto would have much to gain. Under the guidance of Steve Kerr, known for valuing individual development within the collective, the young center could refine his skills and become a more complete player. His height and reach naturally make him a rim protector, but he also presents offensive potential that should not be overlooked. With training and adaptation, he could contribute in pick-and-roll situations, as well as expand his game with mid-range shooting, a skill increasingly valued in modern centers. Another point that deserves highlighting is the possibility of learning alongside established veterans. Playing with Stephen Curry would mean observing daily the discipline of one of the greatest players in history, someone who redefined the game with his dedication and mentality. Meanwhile, Draymond Green, with his tactical vision and defensive ability, could be a true mentor for Kai, teaching him to use his wingspan and positioning to compensate for any physical limitations in defensive switches. This coexistence would be a natural accelerator of his development curve. Sotto's arrival would also bring a component of versatility to the roster. The Warriors have always sought players capable of adapting to multiple roles, and Kai, with his rebounding ability and presence in the paint, could be used both in more traditional lineups and in hybrid schemes. In moments when the team needed to slow down the pace and play in a more physical manner, Sotto would become an interesting option to give rest to more experienced centers like Kevon Looney, or even share minutes in rotations that demand height and presence in the paint. Defensively, his height naturally makes him a barrier against drives, but the real challenge would be adapting to the speed and intensity of the NBA. Taller players often face difficulties against smaller, faster lineups, common in the West. For Sotto, the learning process would be about improving his defensive reading and gaining lateral mobility. If he can progress in this regard, he could become an indispensable piece in Kerr's system, which demands discipline and intelligence above all. Off the court, Kai's arrival would be a marketing and global expansion phenomenon. The Filipino market is one of the most passionate about basketball in the world, and Sotto's mere presence in a franchise of the Warriors' caliber would boost sales, broadcasts, and social media engagement. Shirts, caps, and all kinds of official merchandise related to him would immediately become highly sought-after items. For the NBA, this move would further reinforce the strategy of consolidating itself as a global league, with representatives and idols across different continents. The very history of the NBA shows that players from markets outside the traditional axis can completely transform the league's projection. The most evident example is Yao Ming, who expanded the NBA's presence in China monumentally. With the proper proportions, Kai Sotto could play a similar role in relation to the Philippines, creating a cultural and commercial link that transcends the boundaries of basketball. For the Warriors, accustomed to thinking big and associating sporting success with global growth, this would be a strategic step. The impact, however, should not be seen merely as a commercial move. For new generations of Filipino athletes, seeing Kai established in the NBA would be an invaluable incentive. He would become living proof that it is possible to dream big, work hard, and earn a place among the best in the world. Every young person who today trains on an improvised court in the streets of Manila would have before their eyes a living example of overcoming. This inspiring effect is intangible but extremely powerful, and it could reverberate for decades. For the warriors, who already possess an identity marked by innovation, embracing Kai Sotto's journey would also reinforce their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Silicon Valley, a region that breathes multiculturalism, would identify even more with a roster that represents different backgrounds and stories. The franchise would not only benefit athletically, but also consolidate its position as a symbol of connection between cultures. Another important detail is how Kai Sotto could integrate into the collective game. His style is not about monopolizing the ball, but about contributing in a complementary way, something that fits perfectly in a team where the main roles are already well defined. This means that his presence would not create ego clashes, but would instead add to what already exists. In a group that depends on harmony to function, this characteristic could be the difference that turns a young player into an indispensable piece. In the long run, if he manages to improve his outside shooting and defensive speed, Kai could even become a top-level modern center. The NBA is increasingly demanding with big men, and versatility has become mandatory. At only 22 years old, he still has room to develop these skills. In Golden State, with the structure, coaching staff, and veterans ready to guide him, the chances of this happening increase considerably. Ultimately, the speculation surrounding Kai Sotto is directly connected to the transitional moment the Warriors are living. The franchise needs to think about the present, keeping Stephen Curry in condition to compete for titles, but also about the future, preparing the ground for when this era comes to an end. A player like Kai may not change the team's immediate destiny, but he could become a strategic investment to ensure medium and long-term relevance and competitiveness. And so, amid complex negotiations, possible trades that could redefine the roster, and the expectations surrounding the arrival of young talents like Kai Sotto, it becomes evident that the Golden State Warriors are living a decisive moment in their history. The future may hold profound changes, but one thing is certain. Every move will be closely followed by millions of eyes around the world, eager to see what the next chapter of this legendary franchise will be. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep up with all the news about the Warriors and the NBA, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any details of the upcoming updates we will bring here. Your support is essential for us to continue together on this journey. See you next time.